Hey folks, Mark Buzan here, and starting off on one of our our subject here for this moment is communicating with passion your cause in a time of crisis when, let's be honest, a lot of people aren't always necessarily thinking about donating, supporting, getting involved with your organization or your mission as well. So I'm joined here by Dr. William Clark, author of a number of books. He's a fundraiser himself. He's well experienced in the whole aspects of non-for-profits and fundraising and the like. Well, I'll ask you just directly out there. I mean, how do you communicate your message or your calls for action without coming off as an insensitive jerk?
Yeah, so that's an amazing question, and we're grappling with that on a regular basis. For us, what we've had to recognize within our nonprofit is that business is still continuing to move forward, albeit in a virtual environment. Things are still progressing forward, and we're also noticing that a lot of folks that we would typically serve, or people who would be looking into our programs this time of year, they're figuring out new normals in their lives. They're figuring out how to move forward, and so we have embraced the idea of acknowledging some of the pain points that have been caused by this virus, right? Some people have lost family members. My family's lost some. Some people have lost jobs. Some people's economic status has changed. Some people have family members who are on the front line, and they're trying to navigate this new normal. So instead of hiding from what people are experiencing, what we found to be really helpful is that we acknowledge what people are going through, and we talk about how to help them pivot from their pain point to programs that we offer. So if you're someone who's lost a job in the state of Connecticut and you're struggling to pivot to find that next opportunity, even in this economy, we help people identify that pain point, job loss, economic change. We talk about ways they can pivot, and we offer opportunities. So over the past 2 weeks, Mark, as a matter of fact, I've personally hosted two virtual job fairs in two different cities here in the state of Connecticut. And because, those cities kind of cover a large territory, we've been able to talk to employers and people who are hiring to say, hey, these are bleeding edge opportunities that exist right now. The number of employers we talk to, Mark, in our virtual job fairs to say, we're growing so fast, we can't even keep up with the business, and we're desperate for people. So that pain point of job loss, that pain point of losing economic status, we're trying to say, hey, we hear you, we understand you, but the compassion is we have a solution to help you. So how about you log on to the job fair? How about you register for one of our programs, and we'll get you connected to the resources that can help solve that pain point.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, then let me throw it out to you there. I can see, the comments I've had, and you probably have chatted with your share of executive directors, board members, people who are really passionate about a given cause. And the comments it says, my nonprofit isn't about healthcare, or it's not about jobs or like this. It's about, I don't know, animal shelter or whatever like this. How do you communicate that kind of and still operate and do that good work that you're doing in an environment when, understandably, I mean, people's attentions are drawn to something else?
Yeah, I mean, but I think you're still hitting it on the head, right? It still comes down to the pain point of your community and the pain point of your customer. So, I'm in the workforce development world, right? And yeah, obviously that has some direct connection to what people are going through with millions of people applying for unemployment benefits around the country. What I do, what nonprofits like me do matters. It makes sense. But let's say you're into a nonprofit that serves puppies or helps puppies or whatever the case may be. It still comes back to the pain point of your customer. If your customer has been impacted by this virus, or family members of your customer has been impacted by this virus, your nonprofit still has an ancillary value that can be offered to this customer. Perhaps the owner of the puppy passed away. Perhaps the owner is sick and cannot take care of the puppy. Perhaps the owner is taking care of other loved ones and had to leave the puppy behind because the loved one they're taking care of is allergic, right? Your nonprofit may have enough opportunity in this space to say, hey, we can still help. But the key to it all, regardless of what your nonprofit is, what it does, what its core mission is, it comes down to identifying the pain point of the people you're trying to serve and letting them know, hey, I acknowledge what you're going through. I hear what you're going through. I believe I can help answer some of the questions of what you're going through and can help you navigate to the next phase.
No, well said, indeed, indeed, indeed. Now, one of the other problems and challenges that inevitably people are coming across in this time is, with such uncertainty, um, organizations, for a variety of reasons, they're trying to, they have to grow. They still have to keep on and offering all those services, and sometimes even more services, increasing their service levels going out. But either the means to fund that are constrained. Maybe they're pulled back to a certain degree, which can also have a bit of an ancillary negative effect of putting some doubt perhaps into your stakeholders, people who fund you, other kinds of things. Think from a perspective like that. You're going through this crisis management situation as an executive director or whoever, a board member. What would you suggest to them as a measure or reaching out to these stakeholders to giving them some reassurance of how you're going to manage it? How would you communicate that?
Yeah, so I mean that's an important question, and I've wrestled with that over the past 60 days or so. I think before you even reach out to a funder at this stage, you need to do an assessment of what's been done over the past 60 days. Now, we've been in this crisis mode for quite a while, but most businesses didn't change or pivot until mid-March, and we were one of those. And so what I did recently, probably several weeks back with my staff, was do an assessment of the first 30 days. What did we learn from our transition, both from a business standpoint, from a customer standpoint? How did we pivot? What did we offer to our customers? What did we offer programmatically? How successful was it? Did we stink? Did we succeed? What are customers saying? And let's write up a article about it so that others can see what we're doing, and for us, so we can learn from it, right? We want to learn from our experiences so we can get better, because the truth is this whole COVID experience has changed our nonprofit industry forever. We've been slow to transition technologically. We've been slow to transition how we operate programs, and now we have been forced to do so. And given the projections of how this virus may linger for some time, this stuff is not changing anytime soon. So it's a good thing to do an assessment of what you've done over the first 30, 60 days of this transition, to talk about what you've learned, how you pivoted, how fast you pivoted, what you're working on, how you can get better. And it's at that point, once you do an assessment, you can reach out to your funders and articulate a message of hope, right? Hope doesn't come from what you expect to achieve. Hope comes from what we know we've accomplished and how we're mixing in an updated vision for what we can do with what we know we can do now. So my staff prior to Corona, we were all outfitted with iPad Pros. We were just mobile because of how we were geographically placed around our state. And we needed iPad Pros to be most effective in our various locations. We were utilizing Zoom a whole lot way before Corona hit. So when Corona hit, we went into overdrive mode with our existing tools and figured out how to use them even better for the programs we offer. Now we can speak with confidence, not about what we believe we can do. We can tell our funders rather, and our sponsors and people who support us that, listen, if you're still wondering what we're doing programmatically, let's share the story about what we've done and what we have experienced and what we know is happening right now. Here are real results. What's happening with our staff because we have iPad Pros, what's happening because our clients are connected to Zoom, how we're leveraging all the elements of Zoom, how we are leveraging all elements of technology, and how our customers have responded. That was the biggest concern. We didn't know how they were going to respond. Yeah. Lo and behold, our customers have responded extremely well to technology in ways that we were not prepared for. So now this is an exciting moment to say we were wrong, right? We raise our hand saying, hey, all the assumptions we made as an industry, we're completely wrong. We've learned some new things about our customers, and we're moving forward with light speed. And here are some other opportunities we think we can get better at. But this outreach to your funder, it won't help. It doesn't make sense unless you have a proven track record over the past 30, 60 days. Now, if you're a nonprofit that's still struggling to transition, you don't have work from home technology, your people don't have laptops or pro tablets, they're not connected at all to your server, or you don't have a cloud system, you got to get that in place. You have to have a track record so your funders can say to you or ask you, hey, so how are your people staying connected? If you don't have a good answer, then what they're going to look at, unfortunately, is how bad of an investment it is to spend our money with you. Even though most funders don't spend money on technology, and we know in our industry we need it, you have to figure out how to make this investment. You have to figure out how to get your people connected and begin to perform. At least get 30, maybe 45, preferably 60 days of performance during this Corona season to show that you can survive and thrive and pivot to the next phase of what online work is going to look like for our nonprofit industry.
Wow, that's really wonderful. I love what you said, William, about the whole aspect of hope, and that's really what we're hoping from this the purpose of this whole summit is a message of hope. Hope comes from not from what you're like there, but from a track record that you've built up in that desk, and that's what people get on that there. So beautifully said, beautifully said. The other thing that I think is really interesting, which you've kind of led, it's a fantastic segue, I guess into the next question, is a few of those aspects of what's really critical here is communicating and being proactive on this. And you and I, we shared, I think recently, was a wonderful video done by the AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, and it recommends in these troubling times 3 concepts. And the first one is, and I'd love for your thoughts on this, is active listening with donors and colleagues, etc. That is so important at this point in time. Tell me a little bit about that and your thoughts.
Yeah, I think active listening with our donors matters, right? But here's, what we're seeing is that our donors are saying, hey, we want to listen to you. You're the experts. You know what's going on the front line. You've been doing this for a while. Tell us what you think. Yeah. And this is a wonderful opportunity. And I can't stress, Mark, how wonderful this opportunity is to show your expertise. If you've been dying for an opportunity to have your funder listen to you instead of you listening to them because they hold the purse strings, you got to take this opportunity. But listen, it goes back to what I said before. If you have nothing to offer, if you have no track record, if you haven't been working towards navigating this new virtual environment, there's nothing to listen to. And as things become normalized, a new normal starts to set in, funders will no longer listen to you because they're going to be listening to people who navigated this crisis well. Yeah. I had a colleague who told me that you're going to find out who your true leaders are in the middle of this crisis, and these leaders are going to be the ones who are going to survive and thrive as the crisis starts to avert itself. So this is an opportunity, talk to the funders and speak, but please speak from a place of experience so that they know they can trust what you're saying.
Yeah, wonderful said. So the next concept that was really brought up in that video was the whole concept of moves management. So explaining the process really about moving a donor from cultivation to solicitation. Now that's generally the whole kind of thing in the fundraising world about how your process is something like this. I would maintain that there's still a certain degree of importance of you still checking in with that process as well. And having personally identified, a lot about where people are, I guess that sort of fits in with exactly what you're talking about, that active dialogue as well, right?
Yeah, man, and I love the framing of that language, move management, right? Because we're constantly pre-corona, during corona, post-corona, we're constantly working on how do we transition a person who wants to support us, or we think we want them to support us, to actually having them invest the money in us. And I think historically, when you look at what it takes to have that transition take place, you always have had to prove your case, right? Yeah. Whether it's you acting as a sub on a contract, whether it's you given a chance to do a grant on your own, or you're given a much smaller grant, you have been called upon to prove your case. Why are you worth the investment? Yeah. This is literally, Mark, no different, right? This is a strange moment in history where every nonprofit, every faith-based institution, every company, every individual, rich, black, rich, poor, white, black, male, female, we are all on the same page. You're in Canada, I'm in the US. Yeah. We're on the same page, no matter where you are, what you look like, what you're going through.
Coronavirus doesn't care.
It doesn't care, man. It has no discriminatory elements to it, right? Yeah. And this is the time where we're all trying to prove our value. The richest people in the world are trying to prove their value, even again, to the masses. Entertainers who have entertained us for years are trying to prove their value again to us consumers. I was on a call yesterday watching a bunch of pastors, senior pastors of mega churches, talk about how they have to pivot and how they feel like they're at a disadvantage because of the size of their churches, because now they got to figure out how to prove the value of their ministries to the masses who have trusted them for years. And so this is an interesting time to figure out how we can move sponsors, supporters, investors, believers into actual givers and donors within our institutions. But I keep coming back to this, Mark. You got to prove it. You got to prove it. You got to show that you can handle it. You got to show that your hypothesis and your strategies are working, and that your teams and your customers are thriving in the midst of this transition.
Well said, well said. But the final point of that video, and we'll try to make it available later to the registrants and guests of this summit, is this video referencing that you and I were referring to from AFB, is above all, and it speaks to what you're saying, don't make assumptions. Don't make assumptions. Do not transfer what you're going through and necessarily what somebody else is going through. Maybe you can make a comment to that effect.
I don't know where to start. I don't know how to end. Assumptions hurts us all personally and professionally. I'll give a professional example. We started this transition. We assumed, we as an industry, and my organization included, assumed our customers would have a hard time connecting online. Come to find out, we were so wrong that we were excited to be wrong. Our customers figured out how to get online. They figured out how to be resourceful. We had, I can't remember if we were talking to a board member or just a colleague in another organization, when I think it was a board member, and his board member mentioned that we got to remember that the clientele we're serving, they are a generation that grew up with technology, with phones in their hands, with internet in their hands, and they are helping their parents who were on the fringe of that, and they're helping their grandparents who were before that time. And we will be surprised, and we have been surprised, how wrong our assumptions were about people connecting. People are much more flexible than we give them credit for. Now, there are some things that my parents are doing that still they rather do in person, but there are a lot of things they're doing virtually with much more ease than they would have 2 months ago now. And so assumptions do not help. I think it's safe, Mark, let's be honest, to go into a new venture, a transition such as the one our industry is going through, with some assumptions, but go into it believing either I'm going to be proven wrong or I'm going to be affirmed. Either way, I want to be flexible to respond to whatever my assumptions prove out to be right or wrong.
Well said, well said, well said. Another question I'm kind of concerned for you is that I've spoken on this. You've stressed this in your podcast, and what I've seen from you, William, is this whole aspect of what a lot of funders, I like to call funders' pet projects, or what they like to go after particular things, and that's what they're going to fund. And I know that if you're out there, you're listening to this as an association or a nonprofit executive, you're probably rolling your eyes. You know what they are, because funders want to fund little things like this, but rather than the big things that are actually going to make things possible. But I would imagine there's a certain element in a time like this where that's even more acutely aware or present on things. Like everybody, the pet project, and everybody is going to want to fund initiative to get masks out, to feed people as well in difficult times. And as important as that is, there's always going to be, and probably even more nowadays, challenges in and around capital and operations campaigns. I mean, what do you advise to people if for example, they've already gone down something like, say, or I hear this, I've seen this in a number of examples. Mark, we had planned for April or May this major campaign for our capital campaign, and here we are. Crap, we can't do it. Like, what? This is talk about throwing a monkey wrench into your plans, because you really do run the risk of going on, or at least the concern is, maybe that addresses the assumption problem you're talking about, of being tone deaf. I mean, can you still communicate that with compassion and address these big issues? I'll leave that to you. What do you think?
Short answer is yes. So there are 3 immediate strategies that come to my mind. First strategy is, you got to remember, this virus took over our continent, our shared continent, early March, mid-March, and that means programmatically a lot of nonprofits have had to shift programmatic operations to a virtual experience, which also means that budgets have not been spent according to plan over the past 60 days.
Mm.
You will be surprised if you reach out to your existing portfolio of funders and ask them, hey, I'm short in my spending in the following categories. How would you feel about us doing a community project with a portion of those unspent funds to provide masks or meals or transportation or other frontline needs? You'll be surprised what your funder will say. And as you said in your previous question, assumptions, they don't help. Secondly, second strategy, if you are good at fundraising, if you're good at friend raising, you will be surprised how many of your friends, how many of your colleagues will give to a special cause because they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. They don't know the first place to go, but they do know that you are engaged in the community. They know that you work at a nonprofit. They know that you serve people or communities that they care deeply about. Talk to your friends, reach out to them personally, let them know what's going on. I rarely ask my family and friends to give, but I had a special project as we were talking about giving away masks,
Yeah.
and I reached out to my family and friends. My mom, who was the inspiration for me asking, honestly, she made me a bunch of masks for me and my family. She sent me a second batch to contribute. My aunt sent me a second batch of masks. I had family and friends give my church resources so that we can buy other masks, and we did, man. And it blew me away. The third strategy, and I'm going to invite people to go to your social media pages, Mark, is to learn how to engage other businesses to sponsor what you're doing.
Yeah.
While, yes, businesses are closing down, jobs are shifting, I can tell you yesterday for Mother's Day, Cheesecake Factory was a zoo. I mean, a flat out zoo. I've been eating at restaurants, or taking out rather, over the past handful of weeks. And I can't speak for the business model, but it seems to be doing pretty well. And there are other businesses that are operating. I did 2 virtual job fairs the past couple of weeks. You will be surprised how many businesses would love to be your virtual sponsor, to let people know we're open for business. We care about our community, and we want to see people thrive. Sponsorships. So if you want to learn more about that, the guru's on the line. Mark, go to his page. But those are 3 strategies that come to my mind, Mark.
Yeah.
It can happen.
So that's such a great point. Then, so tell me then, from your perspective, what can you do or suggest to people where they're faced about, they're faced away from, they can't meet with people. I mean, one of the things that's the classic things we're taught in fundraising and development is that the importance, particularly of making the big asks, of face-to-face meetings, of that building that relationship. Can't do that so
Man,
much anymore. What do you
you
do?
can't do that so much, but there are other ways, right? So I
Yeah.
had a chance to visit your website for your conference, and I we'll talk about this offline. But you're utilizing a company called ClickFunnels, and I'm not here to sell them. I'm not a paid spokesman. I will just say I am a believer of Russell. And that's all I'm going to say. Do your own research. But with that being said, Russell religiously talks about the effectiveness of good sales copy. And I have learned from Russell and his team how to love it too, because a fundraising letter is nothing but a good sales copy letter. Your social media posts are nothing but good sales copy. So all of that can be an introduction to a funder, telling your story, how you've pivoted, where you think you're going, and how they can possibly come alongside you in that journey. Secondly, Zoom is the way to go. FaceTime is the way to go. Virtual meetings is the way to go. Whereas I would typically schedule a coffee meeting with someone, I still do that. We do virtual coffees, right? We
Yeah.
do virtual meetups. You just have to learn how to pivot, Mark, and I think the health and safety of everyone has to take precedent. And so with that being said, we're going to utilize the available tools. All is not lost. I was just on the phone with a funder, not a funder, but a board member, and I was describing just how our program has pivoted. And I told this board member, listen, you'll be surprised how much things are pretty much the same online. Our staff, they behave the same, they perform the same. Our clients, they behave the same, they perform the same, all online. Things aren't that different. It's just that we can't see and touch each other. But we have to get to the point, as we started out in this particular conversation, realizing that business will move forward. And right now, this is how it's moving forward in this virtual environment, and we got to be able to be comfortable with that.
Yeah. So, final question for you is inevitably, if you're a nonprofit that's got staff, let's say imagine you're the executive director or you're on the board of a nonprofit that's got either a large or small staff, whatever that may be, complement size there. Understandably, they're probably going through a lot of worry and concerns themselves about their own health, the ability there. How do you go about doing this? I mean, how if at all would you recommend, if you were with the leader of a team like this, to communicate and reach out to them to communicate, reassurance, to give them, to coach them? Maybe they're even a little bit reluctant as well to go out and make the pitch as well. What do you do?
Yeah, I would say this is the best time for nonprofits who have multiple offices like we do, multiple locations around the state. The best thing that has happened is all staff meetings virtually. This is the best time to get everybody on the line to hear one cohesive message. I would also say this is the best time, since things are a tad bit slower, is to engage in professional development. We continue to do that here where I am, and we offer professional development where we're teaching our people how to grow their programs, how to scale their programs through systems, how to sell their program, how to engage customers, how to recruit, how to market their programs. And I think this is an opportunity where CEOs, executive directors, senior vice presidents, C-suite people may not have had time to do these things because of being too busy driving here, driving there, meeting this person. There's your schedule looks a little bit different, right? And
Yeah.
we have to pivot. And so I would encourage any executive out there listening to this conversation to begin to utilize your downtime where you're not driving as much as you used to actually get on the horn with your staff, do what Mark and I are doing, and have these virtual conversations. Talk about what you've learned. Again, go back, rewind this conversation and talk about rewind to what we talked about, right? What have you learned? How have you pivoted? What have you gained from this? What's going to change forever? What's the exciting news? What's the hope based upon previous experiences? And start to get your staff engaged in a conversation. Mark, I'll close with this, right? Culture is set by the top. Point blank, period. The culture of your organization is set by your CEO or your leader, right? And when the leader is insecure, unsure, fretful about the future, the entire organization becomes fretful. Everyone starts looking for jobs, the organization starts to shudder, and revenue starts to die away. But when your leader, whether it's a for-profit, nonprofit, whether it's in your family, whether it's in your circle, your community, politics, when your leader is optimistic, they have solid grounding. Their thoughts are grounded upon facts and information, and they are able to tell a story about how we've pivoted, what we learned, where we're doing good, where we're doing not so good. You can start to see how that changes the culture of your people, and your people will adapt because they trust you. It is about you, the leader. It is about what you're projecting. I'm not saying project a false sense of security, a false sense of hope when that may not be the case. But what I am suggesting is, again, rewind this conversation. When it's time to pivot, fix the situation and pivot, then assess it 30, 45, 60 days after the fact to determine what actually worked,
Yeah.
what didn't work, what are we going to learn from this, and how we're going to move forward. That message, that culture will ring through and true throughout your organization, whether it's virtual or whether it's in person.
Well said. Well, just to close out the conversation, then, I mean, if you had a message of hope, and this is what we're really hoping, trying to this day of how nonprofits during these difficult times can not only just survive but thrive going forward, what would be your words of encouragement or your parting message then?
Man, thank you so much for that. I would encourage every nonprofit board member, executive, staff member, frontline person to run to the change. Embrace what's happening. Don't shy away from it. Don't run away from it, because the situation is pretty clear, and it's telling us that this is not going to change. Whether the vaccine takes another year or so is irrelevant. What is clear is that there is a new normal and people are already adjusting to it, and you want to run to the change before the new normal freezes you out. You don't want to be the nonprofit on the outside looking in saying, hey, we still got computers from 2007 and they don't have webcams, or we can't update software. You don't want to be the nonprofit that still can't figure out how to get on a virtual call with your staff. You got to figure it out. You got to make the investments. As you are planning for tomorrow and the next quarter and the next year, you're putting together your programmatic budgets. Now is the time, and it's pretty clear your budgets must include programmatic expenses on technology. This includes applications, systems, and hardware. This will help propel your team forward. It will bring you into the 21st century. It will make sure that your nonprofit is ahead of the curve going forward, and you will no longer be caught behind the eight ball if something like this happens again. We have to be mobile, we have to be agile, and we can't do that when our technological systems are not up to date. These tech systems not only impact programmatic offerings, it impacts our ability to fundraise. It impacts our ability to generate revenue from funders, earn income from businesses we may operate, or even in Mark's case, where he specializes in his sponsorships. So we have to run towards a change and embrace every element of it so that we can be there when things start to get in place and funders can look at us and say, hey, I've noticed that your organization made that transition. How can we come alongside you guys and partner with you all?
Well said. Folks, there you have it. Dr. William Clark, you want a little bit more of information about him and the books or how you can reach out to him. His information in his bio is on the site. Above all, thank you again, William, for joining us. Stay tuned for our next session on the Survive and Thrive Nonprofit Summit. Thanks again.